22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
And are not afraid to say it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show, episode 300. Yes, this is the 300th episode of the People Before Politics radio show. Show started August 3rd, 2014 by me and my partner, Damon K. Jones. We had our original co-host, Cynthia Turnquest Jones. And we've had several guest co-hosts, Synth, Priscilla Etchie, Tasha Young, Tasha Diaz, Juanita Lewis, Andrew Falk from the Working Family Party, and several others. Okay, I'm just reading some comments. And then to our latest lineup where Lorraine Lopez and Dr. Robert Baskerville, a.k.a. Bob, who will be on any second. Shout out to Lorraine, who has held us down for at least the last 100 or so episodes on and off. Shout out to my partner, Damon K. Jones, again, whose vision this was. Whose vision this was to do the show. It used to be a blog talk radio show he had. And when we started Black Westchester, we started the show over on InTheMixRadio.com. Shout out to DJ Cruz. Shout out to everybody who's held us down, everybody who's ever listened, everybody who's ever tuned in, everybody who's ever donated. We appreciate all of you. Anybody, we have a new donate button, so anybody interested in donating, just click the donate button and put something in there and keep us going for another 300 episodes. Dr. Bob is about to tune in a minute. So let me, while we wait, and thank you, Maria. Congratulations on 300 episode. Thank you, Wayne Hardy. Say congratulations, Black Westchester. We appreciate that. So on the 200th episode and the 100th episode, we had a really, really, really big celebration. We had everybody from Andrew Stewart Cousins and George Latimer, all kinds of elected officials, previous guests, everybody coming through to say what's up, to say a couple of words about Black Westchester. We had a big celebration, especially the first one. First one, we was really celebrating the 100th episode. But with all that's going on right now, I did not feel in the mood to celebrate with all the young people being killed in the street right now. Last week's show, we did ending senseless gun violence, and we had community leaders from Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and New Rochelle, 3 areas that are being hit hard already, and it's not even really hot outside. The summer is not here yet, and so I decided to dedicate this show. We had community leaders last time. I decided to dedicate this show to the community. I posted the link everywhere. Anybody who would like to come on to speak about, thank you, Nas. Nas said congratulations. Anybody who would like to come on today and say a couple of words about senseless gun violence, how it's either affected your family, um, the need that we need to end this. Also, we're 2 days away from the 1 year anniversary of the killing of George Floyd. So I wanted to give everybody, I wanted to take this 300th episode and give everybody in the community, all the listeners, all the people that follow Black Westchester, a chance to speak if they would like to. Again, if you don't see the link, hit me, text me, hit me on Messenger, and I will send the link. I try to share it everywhere on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So people, if you want to just come on and say a few words about the senseless gun violence in our community, or about the 1 year anniversary of George Floyd, do you feel that anything has changed? We're opening it up today for the first time to the community. I'm going to take this hat off because it's hot, but I just wanted to shout out my New York Knicks holding it down. First time in the playoffs since 2013. They will be their game starts in about an hour while the show is on. So I will have it on in the background with the volume down while we're doing the show. I've been a New York Knicks fan, lifelong fan, since way before Patrick Ewing, days of Bernard King. And it's just good to see the Garden rocking again. They made it to the playoffs and secured first round. And they will be playing the Atlanta Hawks. So shout out to all my ATL people out there. So shout out to my Knicks. Now I'm taking the hat off because it's hot. And if I turn on the fan, you'll hear all that noise in the background. So I don't want to do that. But let's go Knicks. Let's go Knicks. Let's go Knicks. All right, so Bob is in the green room somewhere. He should be setting up in a minute and about to come on. Again, I want to give everybody opportunity today to speak. I want to use our platform for the community. You see, I got a little breeze coming in. You see my Black Lives Matter flag blowing. I want to give everybody an opportunity to come on, get in, to speak. Like I talked about last week, in the last couple of weeks, we had a 16-year-old, 17-year-old young man shot and killed in broad daylight, 10 a.m. in the morning on a Thursday, on his way to his friend's house. His friend's mother found him on her doorstep, just bleeding out. We've had a shooting at the projects in New Rochelle, 5 people shot, 1 killed, pronounced dead on the spot, 1 shot in the back, taken to the hospital. I don't know his I don't know what his status is after that, and 3 others with non-life threatening injuries. And then hours later, you had somebody shooting up on Main Street in New Rochelle, shooting at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor windows, just shooting out windows. Not sure what that was about. And then we had a 6-year-old caught in a crossfire in Yonkers. Those are just some of the shootings. We've had several others in the area. And even though this is not just a Mount Vernon, New Rochelle problem, I invite my people from Greenburgh, Peekskill, Austin, any other communities, local communities, the Bronx, to speak on this senseless gun violence is plaguing our community. It's a perfect storm this summer where a lot of inmates were released because of COVID or bail reform, and if they couldn't find jobs, there was no stimulus checks for them. There's no unemployment checks for them. What do you think that they're going to do for money? And then, COVID kept a lot of people in the house, and now everyone is out the house. Thank you to Ray Woodson Samuel. Congratulations, Black Westchester family, on the 300th episode. Greatly appreciate you, my brother. You keep doing what you're doing up there, representing us on the county. Yes, sir. So people were locked in the house because of COVID. and now they're outside. So a lot of people hadn't seen each other outside. So gun violence and the violence in the street kind of went down, but now it's hot. It's getting hotter and hotter. It's still spring, and we having shoot ups. We had a shoot. We had 2 people shot after a peaceful DMX visual here down the street on 4th Street Playground. 2-3 hours later, to the point that the News 12, my man Todd Milburn had to jump in his vehicle to to shield himself from the shots, and the person who got shot jumped in the vehicle too and had to hide out until everything died down and they could wave the cops and get an ambulance for him. Yo, senseless gun violence is plaguing our community right now, and we all need to get involved one way or another. I have my first person on. I got Wade Hardy in the Qualified Immunity crew. I'm gonna put them on the screen. Hello, hello, hello. How are you? You're muted. Your phone is mute. Your screen is muted. Please say your
Hello.
name and
My name is.
welcome to our 300th episode where we're talking about senseless gun violence and the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd. So,
Thank you for having me. My name is Darlene, and I'm part of the End Qualified Immunity campaign here in New York. And thank you for having me.
now explain for there's still people, we try to educate people. There are people that do not know what qualified immunity is, why we need to end it, and where your organization is fighting for. Speak about that.
Sure. I do find that a lot. So qualified immunity is a legal doctrine made up by the Supreme Court back in 1967. And I see a lot of people in the street calling for end qualified immunity. Calling for accountability, police accountability. And really, qualified immunity is the reason that we are unable to hold them accountable many times. Criminally, that's a different story. They just don't go after cops criminally most of the time. But even civilly, we see a lot of people that, there's a lawsuit, there's then a settlement. But what the qualified immunity standard says, that there has to be clearly established law in order to bring about a civil suit. And because there are a lot of cases that settle outside of court, essentially there is over and over again no actual clearly established law. So it goes around and around in circles. And case after case gets thrown out. We don't see a lot of those cases. But when a police officer or corrections officer is able to then abuse people and there is no accountability for it, this is why, because of qualified immunity. So it basically lets them act with a shoot first, think later kind of attitude. And with the qualified immunity, they're able to get away with it. They don't lose their jobs.
Right. Is that the name of your organization, End Qualified Immunity? Is that an organization or?
Yes. So it's End QINY. So it stands for End Qualified Immunity New York. So NQINY. And we just had a rally on Saturday it was on Friday in Manhattan. We're going to have one on Monday in Albany, and then on Tuesday in Rochester.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do people, if people want to join your organization, find out more about your organization, how do they go about that? Social media, website, anything like that?
Oh, definitely. So they can either go to Instagram or to Twitter and basically look up at the @ End, ENDQINY. Okay. And they can even go on Instagram and see the rally that we had over the weekend. Very successful, lots of speakers there, told their stories. I told my story myself. I had a son who was beaten in a correctional facility and subsequently died. So he was 22 years old. So I fight for him. There was also a young lady there who told her story. I believe what happened to her happened in 2014. She was brutally assaulted by several police officers. She was stripped down almost completely naked. She was brutalized, And actually, she said at that press conference that an officer, a female officer, saved her life because the officers did not document her injuries, but she was injured. And if it wasn't for that female police officer stepping in against the other officers, she believed she would have died. And this was her first time after all those years speaking about it. The strength of this woman was unbelievable to speak about it after all this time. It was amazing. Like I said, I myself got up there and there were other people as well. But several legislators are backing this bill. But what we really need is for people to get involved. You know, as I said, there is no accountability unless people demand that we end qualified immunity. But if they don't know what it is, they don't know what they're fighting for. I constantly say people are walking around with flags and saying they want accountability, but this is the legal reason why you don't get it. And if they end this, we have a better chance for us getting it. The other problem is that it's hard to find an attorney. And I don't know if anyone's ever gone through anything and then it was difficult to find an attorney. It was difficult to get an attorney to listen to your story and then feel like you had a chance, right? Because a lot of these cases have to be taken on contingency. So if they don't feel like they're going to make money in the end, they're not going to take it. It took me 3 years to get an attorney to take my case. My son, according to the OSI and the COC, they're different organizations that actually investigate. They found that my son was brutally beaten. He had blunt force trauma all over his entire body. His face and head were completely disfigured. And they found that the officers lied on official documents. They gave 4 of them termination letters, but then through binding arbitration with their union, they kept their jobs and did not miss 1 day of work. So all these officers are still working in the facility. You know, they still terrorize the witnesses for a long time after. I've had to advocate for people several times, let them know that I am not playing. I mean, I lost my son. I have nothing left to lose. So I've had to advocate for their medical. I've had to advocate for their safety, you know, but what people need to realize, and if anybody knows anyone that's incarcerated, if anyone loves anyone that's incarcerated, and they worry about them, because I know they worry about them, you have got to get involved now. I had no involvement before. I felt alone. You know, you go on those visits, you're afraid to put your hands too far under the table. You know, you feel all weird when you're there. You know, they treat you like crap, and you just deal with it by yourself. But you need to get involved with an organization before you get to the point where I am, because it could make such a difference.
Someone asked, how long ago did this happen? And you may have said it, but they didn't hear you.
I might not have. So my son, this happened to my son in 2017. Again, he was 22 in 2017. So it was October of 2017. Because other incarcerated individuals called me to tell me that my son was severely beaten and I needed to call, I got on the phone right away. You know, they didn't know that he died, but they knew that he was beaten the night before and they wanted me to call. And then when I did, you know, they gave me the runaround, said I couldn't speak to anyone, said they had to check the records back and forth. And then I waited. And then finally, I got the worst call of my life from a reverend that said, I want you to sit down. And then I knew that was it. I knew that was it. And then I was yelled and screamed at because not by the reverend, but I forgot to ask how to get my son's body. And I called back and I got the runaround again. And when I said, I need to know how to get my son's body, the guy yelled at me and said, you should have asked when you had him on the phone.
Wow.
Like, just total disrespect, treating me like crap. You know, I wasn't even yelling. Amazingly, I wasn't even yelling. You know, They treat you like garbage. They think you're garbage. They think you are garbage and you mean nothing and your life means nothing. And they walk around with impunity because they were given that ability through the Supreme Court. So I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't vote for anyone on the Supreme Court. And I'm sure you didn't either, because we don't vote for people on the Supreme Court. But they
Right.
have lifetime bench. They will be on the bench for their lifetime. And in this case, there were two Supreme Court justices that were just appointed by Donald Trump. And most of us probably don't like him, I would imagine. So we're stuck
What
with
what
them.
what facility? Wait, Hardy Jackson. What facility did this happen in?
In Wendy, so up in Buffalo, which is Erie County, in Wendy Correctional Facility.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you told the story. I mean, we try to out spotlight any injustices, and a lot of times we only talk about when it's at the hands of law enforcement and not talk about when it's at the hands of ourselves, which endless gun violence in our community is a plague like COVID. And we need to be equally outraged about all of this stuff. Till we are outraged and we do something about it and we step up. And like you said, more people need to get involved in these fights. So that's why we dedicated the show. Like I said, it's our 300th episode. And instead of celebrating, I wanted to just have this kind of a conversation about situations like that, about endless gun violence, about whatever people feel has changed since George Floyd has died a year ago. I wanted to dedicate the show to that. So one more time, give your website, your social media, how people can contact you and find out more about your organization and what you do.
Sure. So we can be contacted on either Instagram or Twitter at ENDQINY dot on Instagram or Twitter. So ENDQINY. So it stands for New York. So hopefully if you're in New York, you can join us. Again, we're having tomorrow in Albany, so that's Monday in Albany at 12 o'clock. There will be a press conference. And then on Tuesday in Rochester at 3 p.m., there is another press conference. So you could also follow me. I just don't know what my handles are, but people seem to be able to find me very easily.
And what's your name again? Say your name again.
My name is Darlene.
Okay.
I go by Darlene Patricia, I want to say, on Twitter.
Okay.
And on Instagram, I think it's Freestyle Chick 404. So it's FreestyleChic 404. Yes, I'm old school.
Okay. Hey, so am I. I mean, I just turned 55 in February, so I'm like.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, like I said, people really need to get involved. I mean, listen, I lost my only child. And some days I don't want to get out of bed. I mean, but the strength that you get from the community that I have become part of is immeasurable. And it's so important because you don't want to be me. You don't want to get involved when you're me. You don't want to be that speaker up there that is talking about something that is breaking everyone's heart. I really want everyone on here to go to Instagram. If you have Instagram, go to Instagram and go to @ENDQINY and then watch the video of the press conference. You will hear most of my story. You will hear that story that I told you from Katrina Martinez and other people speak, and it is heart-wrenching. We had Akeem Browder there, who I'm friends with. Most people probably know Khalif Browder and the story of Khalif Browder. So his brother was there with me as well. And then we had Melania Brown, if anyone had heard of her sister, Lillian Polenko, who was transgender, who died in Rikers Island Correctional Facility in 2020.
Mm.
So we have really just come together. I mean, these people are, my friends that I talk to all the time. So we have really just band together to try to make this happen. But our loved ones are gone. I mean, Khalif, Laylene, and my son Dante can never come back. And we have holes in our hearts forever. So we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for all of you. We're doing it for everyone else. Because I've said many times, people don't understand what qualified immunity is. You don't want to have to understand what qualified immunity is because it doesn't make any sense. But God forbid you ever get stopped by a police officer and it escalates. You ever, for whatever reason, come in contact with law enforcement and it escalates for any reason. They could get off even if they have violated your civil rights. So they can violate your civil rights and still get off on a technicality called qualified immunity. So on our website as well, on those Instagram and Twitter, there's, especially on Instagram, there's information regarding qualified immunity that everyone can kind of get quick facts on and kind of get familiar with it a little bit. But it is so scary as a mother. Like I said, now nearly 4 years since my son died, that I have to worry about the whole case getting thrown out when they determined on their end that their officers lied on official documents and that they beat my son and that he had blunt force trauma that the medical examiner could not explain. And the officers lied and said he did it to himself. Then after that didn't work, they said they didn't see anything. Look up my son's name. Look up my name. My name is Darlene McDay. Google my name. You will see a picture of me and my son, and then you will see a picture
What
of
was
my
your son's
son.
name? What was your son's name?
Dante, Dante, Taylor.
Okay.
I can't even Google my name anymore.
I want to welcome to the show my co-host Dr. Bob has joined us, and one of our listeners, Stephanie Swan, said, "I am in Westchester County. I will be following your story, Darlene."
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
And Wade Hardy said, "Statute of limitations don't end for murder. Keep up the fight for your son."
Yep. I'm keeping up the fight. Unfortunately, the motion went in, I want to say 8 months ago, and the motion was from the defense for qualified immunity. And I'm waiting now 8 months with no further court date in sight until that federal judge decides on that motion. And if he decides on that motion, they could throw out my case.
Well, I want to, you know how to contact me. Reach out to me on social media. We need to bring you back on the show just to have a segment on you. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But I wanted to do this, to give as many people a chance to talk on the situations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I greatly appreciate you. Dr. Bob, did you have any questions real quick?
Well, no questions. Your story and loss of your son was very poignant, and I'm sure many of our listeners were just as moved by me in sharing the tragedy of your son. And I think, for one, I'm glad that Darlene, that you were able to draw on your pain and convert it into motivation to try to ensure that other families don't have to experience the same thing. And certainly I hope that our listeners, who many of us, and starting with me, have faced similar kind of challenges in our families. And so I hope those who have family members who may find themselves incarcerated and subject to abuses by our corrections of officers will perhaps join with you. There is strength in numbers, and it sounds like you've already gone a long way towards mobilizing people. And so we wish you success and invite you back on to talk about what's happened since today.
Is this your last appeal? Someone asked.
What?
Is this your last appeal? Stephanie asked.
It's not an appeal. The lawsuit was a federal lawsuit, so it's in federal court. So we're just kind of moving ahead now. But what happened was it took me 3 years to find a lawyer because, as I said, it's difficult to find a lawyer. You need to have a lot of information, really, to give them because it's in a correctional facility. So it's he said, she said, one word against the other, right? And most of the time they don't have any cameras. So what are you really, the officers say he did it to himself, he killed himself, type thing. How are you going to prove any differently, basically? I was lucky in that people willing to step up. Often in correctional facilities, the other guys, they can either be afraid, they could be bribed, they could not care, they could want to stay out of it. In my son's case, they loved him. They stepped up and they came out and they, I spent $20,000 to have. That's another thing. People don't have $20,000 to throw away, right? So I spent $20,000 to send investigators into the facility to go speak to these other individuals so that they could get their statement down early on. So that's what prevents people from being able to do what I've been able to do so far. But yet, even being able to do that, this case could take so many years in court because of our court system. And then because of the way it's set up with the police unions, you really cannot fire a cop in most cases. I mean, don't be fooled, people. Derek Chauvin was a sacrificial lamb. That was it. They were willing to give up one because it was so horrendous and it was on video. But we did not win there. But if we all get together, I believe we can win. But what I need everyone to do, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, one last thing I wanted to say, what we're really asking people to do and what you really need to do and how you can really help if you can't make it to our events, which we are planning more events. We'll plan some virtually and everything. But follow the page and then you'll be aware of what's coming up, which would be great. But please call your Senate, your senator, and call your assembly people and tell them to sign up to co-sponsor the bills. We need more co-sponsors. Right now in the Senate, I believe we have 17, and in the Assembly, we're up to 25. But we need people to co-sponsor this bill, especially senators. So you call your senator and you say, I demand that you sponsor, and in the Senate, it's S1991. So it's S1991. And then the Assembly.
That's the New York State Senate, right?
Yes, the New York State Senate. And then in the Assembly, it's A4331. So Assembly is A4331. And you have to demand that they do it.
Okay. And we have one last question from Wade Hardy. He said, what happened with state prosecution? Did the local DA investigate?
Yeah, so I'm not sure 100% if the local DA investigated. Only because very early on, I got the FBI involved. And that's still a pending investigation. I am hoping and praying that one day we may see something from that investigation. But unfortunately, COVID got in our way and there needed to be some travel. So my hope is still there, but it's hard to get your hopes up after waiting for 4 years. So, but the local DA did nothing.
Do you know the names of the senators who co-sponsored it? And if so, was Andrea Stewart Cousins one of them? And that was a question from Stephanie.
She is not. And I actually hear that so if you look up either bill, if you type in, Google S1991 or A4331, you can see who's on the bill and who co-sponsors. And I would say
the Assembly S1991 or what?
A4331.
Or 331. Okay.
Yeah. So Andrea Stewart Cousins, I'm actually hearing, is a big opponent of doing this. So I know that she is, head of the Senate, and she's very important to get on board. So
Stephanie wants you to know she will be personally calling her.
Good. Because I spoke to her chief of staff the other day, who I had a conversation with her. If anyone's heard of HALT, that was just passed into law for solitary confinement.
Yes.
I worked on that bill to get that bill passed, so I was involved in that as well. So many of the senators know my story, have heard me speak, so they're familiar with me to a certain extent. Andrea Stewart-Cousins does not get on. She does not get on a phone call. Guess she's too good to get on a phone call. But I did speak with her chief of staff, who I'm hearing is very powerful. But on this, I'm not getting a good vibe from her even. So definitely put on that pressure. If you put on the pressure, they will have no choice, because the people are speaking and the people are calling for accountability. And sometimes I wonder, like, what do they think they're calling for? Because if they keep qualified immunity, how can you hold cops accountable? Because that's a law. So you won't have
So
accountability.
you basically can't have criminal justice reform without ending qualified immunity.
Yeah, because qualified immunity says that they could essentially violate a person's rights in a way that it's never been violated before, especially. So if you're really good at thinking of new ways to torture people, you have even a better chance of getting off. If anyone does any research tonight on qualified immunity, your jaw will drop as to what they've been able to do and get away with it. A little example is, let's say I choke you. I'm a woman, you're a man. I choke you with my right arm and I put my right leg into your back. And then we go into court and they say, all right, well, it's never quite happened. A woman has never done that to a man of your size before and your stature before. So I'm going to grant, this woman, I'm a police officer, qualified immunity. But the next time somebody does that, then, they can be punished. Not punished criminally, but civilly.
So I looked up the definition.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, qualified immunity is a legal principle that grants government officials performing discretionary functions immunity from civil suits unless the plaintiffs show that the official violated clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually started, they argued that reasonable person would have known thing on in the George Floyd trial and the Derek Schiff.
Somewhat. That was a reasonable officer, so it's slightly different standard. But that definition that you read is a little tricky, because we, as laymen, essentially, would believe a reasonable person would know that you can't choke another person, right? Like, isn't that reasonable to think you're not allowed to choke another person? But there's been cases thrown out like that for qualified immunity.
One of our listeners, Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., whose father was killed in White Plains by the White Plains Police Department. He said you also need prosecutors who are not afraid to prosecute. And he also agrees that Derek Chauvin was not a win.
Mm-hmm. He's absolutely right. Yes, we need prosecutors. And recently I saw the New York AG came out with this New York Police Accountability Act. And we've been reading through that. We just saw it, come out yesterday. We were able to get the wording on it today. But it's not a substitute for passing this bill. Don't let them trick us. Don't let Letitia James trick you. And one thing that people may not understand either. So in my case, after finally getting an attorney after 3 years, basically this, Letitia James is the person, or not her personally, but the AG's office, their office is who actually represents the corrections officers and police officers when there's wrongdoing. They represent them. So in my son's case, it's probably about 15 defendants that are being sued. Because the officers, there were 4 of them that lied, and they tried to say that they were the only ones there, but it was proven to be wrong. So the other ones are going to, they should be in trouble as well. Then they tried to lie and say, well, we didn't realize that we had to include them because they weren't involved in the use of force, which again was a lie. But Letitia James' office looked at suddenly, well, who am I going to represent? And I thought that meant that possibly they wouldn't represent all of the officers, and then they would have to pay for attorneys themselves. And when it was all said and done, they said 7 of like the 15, so 7 officers are not going to be represented by the AG's office. They had to get private lawyers. Guess who's paying for those private lawyers? You and me. So private lawyers are going to be paid to represent 7 of the officers who we know were wrong, that the AG's office knows is wrong. But there's a conflict of interest for her to actually represent them. But they don't have to pay for their own attorneys. We do.
They also
How
don't
does
pay
that
for the
make any
fines.
sense?
They also don't
No.
pay for the lawsuits. The lawsuit.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
the ironic thing is, if your son is killed by the police and you sue, your tax dollars are paying part of the lawsuit money that you get rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
I always found that
Yep.
very interesting.
Yes. Yes. And I'm not sure if people realize that. Basically, there's this whole fund out there, apparently, that they have to pay for these lawsuits. So they don't really think anything of it. It's no big deal for them to,
I think I heard that New York City Police Department budgets $10 million a year for these type of lawsuits. I think that was the
correct.
last thing I heard.
Yes, you're right. They expect them. They know they're coming because they don't stop. And even though they're paying them out, they still don't stop. They cannot control these people. As I said, the Department of Corrections gave termination letters to 4 of these individuals that I know of, that I absolutely know of. And then I was able, through a FOIL request, to get the transcript. And it was a joke and a half. The Department of Corrections attorney versus the union attorney. And the union attorney was so disrespectful. The things that he said, the things that he said about my son, the jokes during this whole thing. And apparently, in the end, they won because, again, couldn't prove exactly. Their story was, well, I didn't know I had to include the rest of the witnesses. They can claim to be so stupid and get away with it. And we're just sitting by and saying we want accountability. But we don't even know what that is because we haven't learned about qualified immunity. So I want everyone to, educate everyone else out there and then get involved because we can do this. But the session is over in 10 days. So we have got to get on these legislators and say, we want to end qualified immunity. If we end qualified immunity, the police department, corrections department, they're going to go crazy. They're going to go crazy because they do not like change. Halt was passed, and they're going crazy, and they're suing New York State. It doesn't even go into effect until a year from now, and they're already suing New York State because they will not let us make a change. Because guess who's running New York? They run New York. The police runs New York. The corrections officers run New York. Both of those unions run New York. We need to take it back.
I want to thank you for coming on. Please feel free to reach me through social media and send me whatever information you can so I can keep getting that information out there. Okay. So people can call their senators and their assembly people and we can get something out hopefully this week to get people amped up to do that. But stay in touch with me, let me know any updates and stuff. And I want to do a whole show on this whole qualified immunity thing, period. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, hopefully soon before the session's over so we can get people educated and get them out there and demand it. Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time. And I wish you well in your fight. And anything you need from Black Westchester, please let us know.
Thank you so much. And sorry for hijacking your show.
Oh, no. This is great conversation. Stephanie Swan said, God bless you, Darlene, and keep the fight, and keep the faith up.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right.
Yes.
Dr. Bob, how are you, my friend?
Yes, I'm sorry, AJ. I was having a little technical difficulty Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was having a little technical difficulty. Yes, I was saying I had technical difficulty earlier in the show. That's why I kept bouncing in and out of the waiting room. So you'll forgive me. Again, moved by Darlene's story and the murder of her son in the custody of corrections officers, I guess here in New York State. I did want to add, AJ, that actually qualified immunity has a connection to the fervent debate that's now taking place about the nature over the question of critical race theory, right? As you remember from the day, the underlying supposition of qualified immunity is what would a reasonable person do? And construct of a reasonable person is one of the points of attack that critical race theory and other more critical rules of legal thought have mounted to existing jurisprudence here in the United States. Query raises the question, amongst others, it raises the question of whether or not the reasonable standard, the reasonable man standard that seems to any defenses of otherwise unethical behavior, in fact, makes any sense, and whether it can bear close scrutiny. And I just wanted to, I think there's a lot of misconception here in the United States about exactly what critical race theory is and how it relates to these larger debates that we're having about police policy, law, and the role of the courts. And I wanted to point that out.
Again, for everybody just tuning in, this is Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show. This is our 300th episode. Yes, our 300th episode. And as first, the 100th and the 200th, we had big celebrations. The first one was actually a party. We had a party in the studio. Literally had a party in the studio. In 200th, we had a celebration as well. But with all the stuff going on, I did not feel like celebrating. And again, I want to put some importance of we are outraged about things, matters of law enforcement, blacks and browns killed at the hands of law enforcement. But we need to be equally outraged about the senseless gun violence going on in our streets. And that's one of the things I would like to continue with the conversation. And we opened it up. I shared the link with everybody all through social media. If anybody today wants to come on, I wanted to give the community a chance to speak either about the senseless gun violence that is plaguing our community or the 1 year anniversary of the summary execution, as my brother Kenneth Chamberlain always says, the summary execution of George Floyd. 1 year later, do you feel much has changed in the way of criminal justice reform? If you, I would like to invite anybody who's listening, and if you know anybody else who might want to speak, please share the link with them so they can join us. We want to hear from the community today. I wanted to give the platform an opportunity. I wanted to give the residents, the community, a chance to speak today. So that's what we're trying to do today. I understand there's a lot going on. We got the NBA playoffs on today. I have my TV on because the Knicks game is about to come on in a few, and I will have what's
going on?
I have my TV. I have my TV on as well. And so my volume is off, but I have my TV on. Huh? What'd you say?
I said you want to be a sports journalist.
Oh, I've always been. I've always wanted to be. I always wanted to be a sports journalist. Period. But I've covered sports a lot through various publications. Usually from a hip hop field, but still covered a lot of sports. But today we're talking about. Somebody said I saw your Nick attire. Yes, I was in full Nick gear yesterday. At the shout out to Save Mount Vernon, they had a candidate forum yesterday. And they had it outdoors on the front of City Hall. First, they had the city council candidates, and the community that was there was allowed to ask questions and stuff. And they had the controller candidates, and then they had the legislator candidates yesterday. So shout out to them. I was a little disappointed in our citizens and residents in Mount Vernon because it was poorly attended. Masks was required. There was social distance. There was plenty of space. They asked everybody bring your little outdoor chairs so you can sit wherever you wanted to sit and still see it. But yet I'm sure more people actually watched it online than actually went to City Hall to see. And I know from putting these events together, it's sometimes you bust your butt to do all of this, and then you have a very very small showing. But I want to encourage Save Mount Vernon, Jesse Van Loo, who's been spearheading that. I want him to encourage him to continue to put on these programs, continue to do what he's doing. And basically, if you keep doing what you're doing, people will come. Unfortunately, in cities like Mount Vernon, if I'm not rocking with you or you support another candidate or something, I'm not going to anything else that you do, regardless. We got to put the community first. We got to start. When we talk about ending senseless gun violence, part of that is voting in the right candidates. When it comes to city council, those are the ones who legislate in the city. Your city council candidates, they legislate. They're the ones that have the ability to make the laws and ordinances and stuff that you need to approve programs and stuff like that for the youth. And when your mayor race comes up, you need to pay attention to that as well, because your mayor appoints your police commissioner and the commissioners of all these different departments. So, everything has to do with politics. Even though we're people before politics, we need to pay attention to the politics. And yesterday I didn't see that, and I was very disappointed. Approve stuff like that for the youth. And when your mayor race comes up, you need to pay attention. Is that you, Bob? Dr. Bob, is that you? Oh, I heard an echo somewhere. I don't know where that came from. Okay. Again, I sent the link. Hoping we get a few more people to actually come through and speak on the issues at hand. I don't know. It sounded like an echo of my voice, Stephanie. She was like, "Who is that talking?" I don't know where that came from. Some feedback somewhere. Modern technology is a beautiful thing sometimes. I wanted to invite anyone who wanted to come on and speak about senseless gun violence, about George Floyd. Well, let me start with you, Bob. So Tuesday will be the anniversary, if you call it that, for the killing of George Floyd. There was a national outrage, demands of criminal justice reform. There's been several killings, including one just miles away from where he was killed, in the same area. Do you think we've made any progress since the killing of George Floyd? What do you see us 1 year later after the killing of George Floyd, as far as criminal justice reform is concerned?
So, for me, the most significant development that has occurred here in the United States of George Floyd is the magnitude of the protests that ensued in the wake of his death, and the publicity that was cast upon it. I know, AJ, because you're my man and we talk. I'm a real student of the civil rights movement, and that has become apparent is that the actual magnitude of the moment of the movement that has 4 Black lives manifests itself in the past year far exceeds by several orders of magnitude the level of protest that we saw here in the United States in the height of the civil rights movement. So in that sense, I think that it's been a phenomenal success, and encourage everyone who has taken to the streets to engage in reasonable, restrained, not degenerating in the acts of destructive property violence, to continue to do so. Definitely. The reality is that so many areas of institutional injustice here in the United States go unaddressed as long as people do not raise their voice in protest. And so if we want to see a change in police, then we must continue to make clear to all of our elected officials and to the civil society, the global society, that we object to this kind of treatment. So in that sense, I think it's been a phenomenal success, AJ. Many of our discussions, however, I do think that one area where we must strengthen our is by developing more sophisticated kind of programs to remedy the problem of police violence and factors that contribute to it. Last week, one of your guests, I believe the president of the NAACP of New Rochelle, was a similar plea and noted that many elected officials that he's spoken to said that they actually want to begin to implement programs that are going to address some of the real serious social justice challenges that our country confronts, but too often we're not doing our part to put together some of those programs. And so in that sense, because I think too often actually, and I think too often we have come to the conclusion that protest simply entails standing up, and that's not the truth. Protest also entails sitting down, getting your ass in front of a computer and actually making some plans that require that you do something and issue a flyer to people to come out and rally. A rally is a very relatively simple event to pull off. Even though I've been involved with many rallies, and I can tell you it's by no stretch of the imagination is it easy. But we are going to find ourselves having solutions delivered for us in response to mass protests. It's the only thing that we're going to do. If we don't have people like Kenneth Chamberlain, who unfortunately, I thought about that these days, and the demise of his father. But if we don't have people like Kenneth and the sister who was on just a few minutes ago, and so many others actually trying to figure out what kind of programs can be put in place in order to
I think you froze a little bit. I think we lost Dr. Bob a little bit. My brother, Kenneth Chamberlain, how are you, sir? The question he was answering is, Tuesday is the 1-year anniversary, if you will, of the summary execution of George Floyd. How do you feel? Have you seen any progress? How do you feel we are 1 year later? Where we are 1 year later?
Well, first, let me just say, congratulations. 300 episodes, brother. That's big.
Appreciate that.
It's definitely big because I remember when you guys first started out and people actually didn't really believe in People Before Politics radio show. And now here we are 300 episodes later, and you have mainstream media following what people before politics is doing.
Yes.
You know, so that says something. But to answer your question, I think that have people awaken? Are people seeing what's happening? Yes. But has it really changed anything? No. People still, we're still getting killed.
Right.
So, you know, I don't personally believe that anything really has changed after the killing of George Floyd. I mean, we have seen certain things that happened in that trial that we have never seen before. Like, when have you ever seen a police chief testify against their own officers? You know, we've never seen that. You know, the only difference between this case and other cases is the fact that when this happened, the world had stood still. So everybody could see exactly what we have been talking about all the time. And that is that my hands can be up, down. I could have on a suit. I could be wearing a wife beater. It doesn't matter. I can speak the Queen's English. I can't change my skin color. And that's how you deal with me, based on my skin color. Okay, so is it great that people rallied behind that and people yelled justice for George Floyd and justice for Breonna Taylor, but you know, Ahmaud Arbery, a Tatiana Jefferson, you know, but my thing is that, and you've heard me say this before, and I'm going to continue to say it until I see a change, and that is the fact that Westchester County has its own George Floyds.
Absolutely.
And when you have these elected officials from all these different cities, and I'm not just going to pick on White Plains, okay? I don't care if it's White Plains, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Yonkers, Greenburgh, wherever. You can't stand there and say what happened to George Floyd was a tragedy and not talk about what has happened in your own backyard and what your own officers have done. You can travel thousands of miles away and stand there and say justice for George Floyd, but you're not saying justice for Jonathan Maldonado. You're not saying justice for Kamal Flowers. You're not saying justice for Damroy DJ Henry. You're not saying those things. And I'll leave my father's name out of it because, see, I understand that it's bigger than Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. You know, and I'm not a selfish person that I would just yell accountability or justice for my father and not yell justice and accountability for these other lives that were lost as well, because they need help too. And to these activists who have these knee-jerk responses to when they're asked why they don't show up at certain things, and they say, well, we go where we're asked. You have been asked to come to Westchester County plenty of times, and you guys don't show up. Why is that? I mean, they want to look at the George Floyd situation and act as if the blueprint has been created now on how to fight police misconduct, brutality, criminality, or, like I say, extrajudicial killings and summary executions. That's not a blueprint. It's not a blueprint. They just had no choice in that particular situation. Blueprints are what we create when we go out there and we're doing the work, because we don't have the big name activists coming to help us. You know, I've got AJ Woodson coming to stand with me. I've got Dr. Bob coming to stand with me. You know, smiling when I smile, crying when I cry. You know, we don't have those big names coming to us and helping us and saying, listen, we're going to bring our people out here and we're going to be out here and we're going to rally and we're going to protest and we're going to show up at these legislative meetings and these common council meetings and demand that there be some accountability in the killing of your loved one. And if it's not, we're going to stay out here and continue to do it until it is. Can you imagine if all of those people that were in Minnesota came to White Plains?
Man,
When my father was killed?
They wouldn't know what to do.
Can you imagine? See, so, and what gets me is that, and now I'm going to talk about White Plains, and I'm going to talk about Mayor Roach, and I hope he has one of his people watching this, because I say what I mean and I mean what I say. You are one of the biggest hypocrites in the world. You cannot. Am I still on here?
Yeah, you're on solo screen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know, I didn't know what you did here. But anyway, you cannot say Black Lives Matter. You cannot yell justice for George Floyd or justice for Breonna Taylor or talk about how horrific those killings were and not address the fact that on November 19th, almost a decade ago, that a 68-year-old man was mocked, taunted, called a nigger, tasered, shot with a beanbag shotgun 4 times, and then shot with live ammunition and killed. All because he inadvertently triggered his life aid pendant. This is the problem that I have. That makes you a hypocrite. So you constantly hear me say, the only reason these elected officials are yelling Black Lives Matter is because it's politically advantageous, not because they feel like they really believe it. And unfortunately, for many of them, it will not be real until it's their loved one. When it's their loved one, then it'll be real. Then they'll say, oh my God. Then they'll be calling for people like myself, like you, like Damon, like Dr. Bob, and asking us to stand with them and demand some type of justice or some semblance of justice in the killing of their loved one. You know, people say Mayor Roach is good for the city of White Plains. What has he done? Even when he talks about police reform or even talks about police brutality or things of that nature, he talks about his work as a legal aid attorney in the Bronx. Nobody cares about that. I know I don't. Let's talk about what happened in your own backyard. You want to put together a task force. How can you put together a task force and not address that? You know, and that's very upsetting and it's very disrespectful to my family when you do that. So when I look at the fact that the anniversary of the killing of George Floyd is coming, and I look at the fact that we're still being gunned down, where is the growth? Where is the change? I mean, the only thing that I can say that's different now is the fact that the young people have begun to stand up and speak out. And it is the young people who are trying to force the change. It's not the old guard because they're complacent. They don't want to do anything. And I will also say that the reason that I'm fighting this November makes 10 years since my father was killed. I am still fighting this fight. Why? Because of failed Black leadership. Community, faith-based, and elected. Failed Black leadership. I said it. If any black leaders want to debate me on it or have a dialogue with me about it, we can do it privately or we can do it publicly. We can do it right here on People Before Politics radio show. I have no problem doing it. And we can let Dr. Bob mediate. So I have no problem doing it.
I just want to further make your point. We wrote an article this month that's in the paper that's out right now. Legislator Damon Marr called out local officials for condemning the killing of George Floyd but remaining silent about those killed by the police in Westchester. He questioned why his fellow lawmakers were quick to condemn the killing of the persons of color 1,200 miles away in Minneapolis, but do not hear peep when it happens here in their own district. And silence is not an option, not for us as lawmakers, not for us as Americans, not for us as human beings. The county legislators wrote in a May 29, 2020 letter written to the mayor and the city council of Minneapolis, and it was signed by all 17 legislators. But legislator Marr realized he didn't see the same letter come out days later when Kamal Flowers was killed in his district. He was like, where's that outrage? So they went to do a second joint statement, April 21st, 2001, when the former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted of the murder of George Floyd, and he wanted no part of it. Instead, he sent an email to his colleagues. He said, I will not be sending your message below, in so much as, and in retrospect, and upon further reflection, I find the board's May 2020 letter to the mayor and city council of Minneapolis to be condescending and presumptuous, particularly in the view of our own glass house of a county, from which we toss our gratuitous comments into the community. We have at least 3 black men in the county whose death at the hands of law enforcement have not in any way nearly reached the point of closure. And then he went on to say, he named the situation. In my very own city, is a letter. This is a response to the chairman, Ben Boykins, who put out the letter. He said, in my very own city, Rochelle, the week George Floyd killing, just days after a huge and orderly Black Lives Matter happened on the steps of our city hall, a young man named Kamal Flowers, who was a passenger in the car, stopped for an alleged and minor traffic infraction, was chased and liquidated. I never heard that word used before. Liquidated by a white police officer, in essence, for the crime of running away from the police. The New Rochelle Police, the New Rochelle Police Department internal investigation concluded that these problematic policemen followed all of the department's policies and procedures in this instance, and that no review or revision of such policies or procedures, such as when to begin and end a pursuit on foot, is required. And yet, this was a situation so inherently fraught with danger for both the running citizen and the police officer that either a policy was violated or there was no relevant policy. He went on to say, in your city, talking to Chairman Ben Boykin, in your city of White Plains, elderly Black Marine veteran Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. was shot dead in his own apartment in 2011 by a white officer who busted down his door after being told to go away after a mistaken medical alert call. 10 years later, still no one has been prosecuted or even reprimanded. The city continues to resist taking any responsibility for the horrendous incident. And the third one he names in 2008, directly across the street from our very own chamber, one of our own Westchester County police officers shot and killed off-duty Mount Vernon police officer Christopher Ridley, who was in the process of aiding a citizen in a life-threatening situation. With the full circumstance of the matter remains in dispute. There are those who chalk this up to solely as a tragic case of mistaken identity. There is no dispute that Christopher Ridley was a hero and whose family did and deserves a measure of respect and remorse from the county police. I attended the unveiling of the Christopher Ridley Memorial on a hot Saturday morning in August of 2019, and spoke with the family members, members of the still grieving family. I was stunned that the only county officer of the law that I saw present to honor Christopher Ridley and his family was publisher and still active correction officer Damon K. Jones. It took a white man to tell our black elected officials this.
So let me just say, when my father was killed, I always tell people I never made it about race until I heard the audio of them calling my father a nigger. The DA's office tried to act like they didn't even hear that word. What did you hear? We're like, excuse me? And we had them play it back again. We know that later on, Janet DeFiore justified it. She said, yes, it was used, but she justified it as a tactic to distract my father. Then, what was even more insulting, Ben Boykin was on the White Plains Common Council at that time. Right. A black man on the Common Council who said absolutely nothing. Nothing. And then as the chairman now, he wants to say something and still not address this. It's insulting. It's disrespectful. And this is why, again, I say that the only reason they say Black Lives Matter is because it's politically advantageous. It benefits them to speak and say that Black Lives Matter. Outside of that, it wouldn't happen. Come on. How fast did they get an Asian bill passed? And yet, we've been trying to get the Emmett Till bill passed for the longest time. Excuse me for 1 second. I gotta check on my mother real quick. Give me one second.
Okay, absolutely. Dr. Bob, would you like to you've been very quiet.
Yeah, so I want to sort of reiterate my assessment of the current state of the Black Lives Matter movement by placing a broader historical context. It goes back to the debate between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois at the turn of the 20th century. Everyone should know this is when the black codes are being enacted in legislators all across the South in a way quite similar to what is happening today. That led to a drastic reduction in the number of voters. And coupled with that, a massive increase in violence against African Americans, but on the part of civilians as opposed to uniformed officers. In response to this, there was a singular debate in the black community. Booker T. Washington counseled black people to essentially accommodate themselves to that the forces of white supremacy were trying to place upon us. And in response, W.E.B. Du Bois insisted that black people, allies, must get out and fight every day in uncompromised, unrestrained fashion. Let it be known our rejection of efforts to try to curtail our rights. And we're at a similar point in the struggle today. The rejuvenation of black protests, the increased scrutiny upon the actions of officers, I think, attests to the importance of us getting our voices. So in this sense, we've seen a tremendous transformation in the role of black people, because in a democratic society, everyone, our elected officials aren't going to do shit because out of the goodness of their heart. As Kenneth rightly points out, they're doing it because they're making a political calculation as to what is in their best personal political interest. If black people want to see the nation adopt policies that are in the interest of Black people. We must reject the idea that anyone acts out of the kind, any elected official, very rare, acts out of a sense of ethical conviction, but rather comes down to what is required in order to win the support of my constituents. So I'm not looking for any elected officials, Black, white, Latino, anywhere in between, to do anything that works to the interest of most marginalized constituents unless they get out there and raise noise. You got all kind of moneyed interests. You got very powerful special interests, like our corrections and police officers unions, who have a kind of privileged position in the electoral order because they have a track record of being able to mobilize money and people. And so if we are going to get out here and get change, then we're going to have to fight for it. And I want to stress this, everyone, because so often the comments that I hear people make suggest that we're ready to give into a sense of cynicism because folks aren't acting in accordance with our ideals. We cannot afford cynicism. This situation can change in a certain degree and in a significant degree if we remain engaged and focused every day. And, you know, as I said before, it doesn't only mean protesting, but it does mean that we have to be committed one way or the other every day to advancing the cause of Black freedom. Y'all may not see me out on the streets every day, but you better believe I am involved one way or the other. Every day of my life is devoted one way or the other to advancing the cause of Black freedom. And each of us must resolve ourselves to make that commitment. There is no rest for us. There's no rest. This is the permanent state. We're in a permanent state of struggle, everyone, and we need all people to be involved. It's really unfortunate that, you know, and Kenneth, and we all allude to this all the time, that there's such a small fraction of our community that actually realizes that they have an obligation to participate and put pressure on elected officials to enact some of the laws and policies that we need. And moreover, as Brother Henry Terry's presence attests, and Kenneth's presence attests, as members of two important civic organizations, there's work for us to do beyond politics proper. We're thankful that Henry Terry has been in the forefront of the SNUG movement and has managed to mobilize other brothers and sisters and trying to get the word directly to people that there's things that we need to do. I will mention, and I'm going to shut up with this, something that our good friend Mike Hope mentioned to us yesterday, AJ, and that is concern that he has about the long-term viability of the Mount Vernon baseball league, right? I think, and Ed, I don't remember, you were a little younger than me, so I don't know who's who in terms of age, but when I was a kid in Mount Vernon, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, there were probably, I imagine there was like 20 baseball teams that were operated by small businesses in the city of Mount Vernon. I played for Avon Stationery. My brother might have played for Sunrise Highway or something. All of us did, and it provided us with a healthy, constructive outlet for our energy, especially as young boys, because we know we need that energy. And our good friend Mike Holt was telling us yesterday that, listen, the baseball league in Mount Vernon is teetering on the brink of dissolution. And that requires, if we're going to turn that around, that requires us. People like us made those programs succeed. It wasn't the government alone that made those, but it was also the actual participation of residents. And so I hope that the limited success that we've seen over the past year to heighten awareness of the problem of police brutality, and also an increase in efforts to address gun violence more broadly, will inspire other people to join with the brothers and sisters we are so fortunate to have on air week in and week out talking about what they're doing.
I want to welcome to the show our brother Henry Terry of Snug. Again, I want to say, while we're always we're real quick to be outraged last year about George Floyd, we forget about those killed by law enforcement locally, but we need to be equally outraged when our young brothers and sisters get killed on the street by senseless gun violence by people that look like us. And it has to be an equal outrage. We can't just write that off. We can't march for people that got killed by the cops 1,200 miles away, and we're not getting involved in our own communities. And this is a brother who got boots on the ground, who's involved in that. And I just wanted to, again, this is our 300th episode. And instead of celebrating, I wanted to talk about, continue the conversation we had last week on ending senseless gun violence, and how far have we really come since the death. We've come with the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd. So I'm going to give you the mic, my brother.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks again, AJ, Dr. Bob, for the invite to this platform. To my big brother, Kenny, I salute you as always. Constantly following you. A lot of times I can't make it out to the rallies or the gatherings that you have put together because we end up having one down here at the same exact time. But as you know, Pastor always reaches out to you and lets you know that your church family and your Mount Vernon family, we're here for you. We love you, brother. But, just to address what AJ was just saying, and Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., God bless, was a member of my church. So, his murder not only affected his physical family, it affected his church family tremendously too, because there was an attachment. And I try to get the young people to understand that, each one of you is like a tree, because there's so many limbs and branches that are attached to you. And each time one of y'all fall, a lot of those limbs don't know what to do. A lot of those branches don't know what to do. They're affected by the trauma of you being killed by gun violence, and also you killing someone else by the senseless act of gun violence. And Bob just said something about growing up in Mount Vernon and playing baseball, Little League baseball, and like he said, he was a kid in the 70s and I was a kid in the 80s, and those small businesses, they still supported the sports that we had. Like all the Little League teams were sponsored by a small business here in Mount Vernon. And like what Mike told you yesterday is true. There's not a lot of small businesses or community leaders that are pouring into us having a baseball field or baseball team, baseball league, or supporting much of anything else that would be in place for the youth. And if we don't support it being in place, it's not going to be in place. And it leaves these kids with another excuse to say, well, there's nothing else for us to do. This is why we on the corner. This is why, we with the gang. This is why we walking around with these guns, because we scared. A lot of the kids that are carrying guns, they're carrying them because they're scared. Scared to be in their own environment, scared to be on their own block, scared to walk home sometimes because of the scene that they got to walk through to get home. These kids are waking up every day on their way to school, walking past candlelight visuals for somebody that they knew in their community that just got gunned down the night before. And they got to walk past this to go to school. How clear of a mind are they going to have sitting in the classroom? You understand what I'm saying? It's so much bigger than them just pulling the trigger. because there's reasons why they're pulling these triggers. They don't want to be those candlelight visuals. They don't want to be those RIP t-shirts that they're seeing. They don't want to be those whispered conversations that they have that they're hearing the adults have when they do go home. But it takes the community to pour into these kids and put your money where your mouth is. Like, you gotta have something in place for them to do when you constantly complain about, oh, they don't do nothing, they just hang out on the corner. What else is in place for them to do? There has to be something else in place for them to do. Otherwise, they're gonna get with their little groups and their little cliques that they feel safe in, and they're gonna be sometimes in between a group or a clique, there's only one gun. And it's being passed around for each one of them to be able to walk home because they're scared. A lot of these young men and women, they're pulling these triggers just because they're scared. And we got to get our community back to feeling like a safe place, so our kids don't have to be scared or feel scared and carry these guns around.
No, again, like I said, we could have celebrated like we did our 100th episode. We had a big party. We had a party in the studio. You know, everybody brought alcohol and snacks, and we celebrated. The 200th episode we celebrated, but I just didn't feel like celebrating. I know 300 is a big deal, but I didn't feel like celebrating. We got young kids getting killed in our community, man, and it's just like, you know, the platform is big. Sometimes it gets smaller. Sometimes people watch it on the video afterwards. Now, you know, I know we got the playoffs on. I'm turning my head a little bit because the Knicks game came on. You know what I'm saying? But I'm here though. You know, but we have to. I had to extend the invitation. Unfortunately, I was disappointed. Not many, like I was when you made the call that day for everybody to come out that Friday in front of the kids' house. And very few people. I made the call for all of those. Like, we only give the link to the people who are going to be on the show. I put the link all over social media for anybody who wanted to speak up. That anybody could just sign on, and I would put them on the screen. And we didn't get, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You know, I mean, I don't feel bad. You know, I'm still proud that I did this, but you know, I'm disappointed that there wasn't so many people that I couldn't get everybody on. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that's what it should have been. Because we see everybody complaining on Facebook. When we're in these little groups, we see people talk about, yo, nobody addressed the senseless gun violence. Why y'all don't address this? We're addressing it. And like Jesse said, like you said, like so many people said, where are you? You know, yes, the playoffs is on. And I bring that up specifically. Kenneth Chamberlain, one of the first rallies he had, he tried to get the brothers to come out, and it was on a Sunday, and it was like, yo, but the game's on. A football game was more important than come standing with your brother. You know what I'm saying? I'm a big Knicks fan, and the game is on right now. This is the first time we've been in the playoffs since 2013. But I'm here doing this. You know what I'm saying? We need to step up, and I'm hoping. And see, it don't have to be everybody. If my voice and putting y'all on influence somebody else, and then they influence somebody else, and they influence, I mean, that's a start. Then I feel like I've done something. You know what I'm saying? I might not get 100 people out there tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? But if I influence one person and our actions save one young man from being shot, then I feel like I've done something. So, I mean, you know, that was the purpose for this. I wanted to give, like I said, an open forum to the community to say whatever they wanted to say and whatever needs to be addressed, because everybody needs to get involved. And I'm proud of the work you're doing. And we need more. You can't do it all. It's like I can't cover every story that's going on. I can't. There's so much going on. I can't cover everything. We need more black papers to cover all the stuff that we need to cover and spotlight some of the great stories going on in our county. There's nobody to cover that stuff. I can't get to everything. You know what I'm saying? We can't. We you know, I don't even know what else to say. I just, you know, that was the purpose of doing this. Bob, would you like to say something?
I mean, listen, AJ, you hit it on the nail on the head. Those who have dedicated their lives to some sort of full-time activist organizer role can't do it all, right? I mean, I know that Henry Terry, for example, as the one leader of Mount Vernon Snug, has his hands full on a daily basis trying to make that program successful. And what that means is that he's looking for volunteers. The program is going to be more successful if brothers and sisters volunteer one day a month as a mentor or something, some way to support the program. But Henry Terry's only one person. They got a handful of people who are involved. Darlene, if she's going to persuade the New York State Legislature to adopt these new laws that restrict the use of qualified immunity, that means that we all got to be there. Got to be massive number of people up in Albany, everyone. We already know this. This is nothing but a numbers game. And if we are so engrossed, not just in the struggle for survival, because it's not all just about the struggle for survival. A lot of us is out here frittering our time away, to use a polite phrase. But we're bullshitting. A lot of y'all who listen to our voices, well, not those who listen to our voices, but more so those who don't listen to our voices, are doing everything other than contributing something to the uplift of their community. People think Saturday and Sunday and in the evening is for partying and television and leisure activity. No, it's also partly for you to devote some of your time and energy and skill and insight into improving the community and perpetuating, building on the things that we're doing right. And it can't be done without y'all. Can't be done without y'all. Black Westchester is a newspaper. Is not going to thrive if we don't have subscribers. Everyone, I'm going to be honest with you. Black folk got a lot of nerve. We got a lot of nerve, y'all. We got a lot of nerve. Because a lot of us ain't doing shit. My personal assessment is about 90% of us do nothing. And then when something go wrong, what we do is we blame white people. 100% of us will do that. But we won't. And listen, our society gets the lion's share of blame for much of what goes wrong here. Undoubtedly. But we have to take full responsibility for the mission of changing those things. That's on us. There's no one going to come save us. People don't. Who cares? Like, so many people do not know what goes on inside of the Black community in the first place. How would they care one way or the other? They're indifferent, apathetic. They're engrossed and absorbed in their lives just like so many of us are. And they got less worries. And so I'm just imploring everyone, because I do think we have to have a frank admission to ourselves that collectively we are letting ourselves down collectively.
Also, last week, we didn't mention it. Damon, Brother John Morrison, who used to do the boxing program at the YMCA. Well, Damon and Brother John got together and said we need one of the things that we lack in our community is seeing a presence of strong Black men. Anytime you see, it scares the hell out of white people, but anytime you see a bunch of men collectively together, positively, it's scary to a lot of people. They started an organization that we're all a part of, 100 Black Fathers for Change. And you'll be hearing a lot more about us. So, a lot of times we speak in a silo, we speak in something to go on in Greenberg, and, we'll be like, oh, that's just Greenberg, and, I'm in the Rochelle, or, whatever. If something goes on in Greenberg and our brother in Greenberg needs to speak, you're going to see a bunch of us standing behind him from throughout the county. Now, he'll be speaking, and if the press want to talk, they'll be asking him questions, but you'll see the presence behind him. If something happens here in Mount Vernon, they're coming to Mount Vernon. Something happens in Yonkers, we're all going to Yonkers. We're still putting it together now, but that's just another thing, just our presence. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have a presence. Like that scene in the movie Malcolm X, when they locked up that one brother and Malcolm went and got the brothers to march down to the police station. Yo, all the dudes on the block started following, and that was going on. Yo, they were like, what the hell? It was like, yo, we're not leaving until we see this brother is okay. We're not leaving until we see that he gets some medical help. Well, he ended up getting some medical help. And they had to do it because they didn't know what was going to happen, because there was hundreds of black men just standing there. They didn't know what the hell was going to happen. That is a dangerous thing. And that's what our community is missing. They have cut off the head of the community. Our community, a lot of communities, we used to police ourselves. The police were a secondary effort. You know what I'm saying? The brothers in the street handled it. The brothers in the neighborhood handled it. When the cops came, they was like, this one need to go to the hospital and this one need to go to jail. Or sometimes we was able to do it without having the police involved at all. You know what I'm saying? Until we step up, that it's going to take us to step up for our community. And every rally I've ever been to, Kenneth Chamberlain, he's not here no more, but he said every rally that he had for his father, do you know that 75% of the people out there were all women? And the sad thing about it, half of them was white. Wasn't even our people. But there was no brothers. I seen people like Yusef Salam's mom and all of them women in the city, they be rallying and everything. There were no black men there. There were no black men that just bring safety to their situation. Like anything could have happened to our women. We're failing as black. Black men have to step up. Period. If we're going to reclaim our community, black men have to step up, and we have to support our women that are out there. So I don't know who's trying to call me, but said Nat Turner flashes in a white man's mind when brothers come together. Yeah, it's a powerful movement. We need to get back to that. We need to, when Brother Henry Terry puts the call out, the brothers need to come out. The sisters come out. Cynthia was there. The lady from the youth shelter Westchester was there. The other lady that was a teacher, she was there. There was 5, 6 other women there. The few brothers that were there, they came because Henry called them from the Bronx and Yonkers. But where was the Mount Vernon men? Where were the black men from Mount Vernon? Where were they? So when he makes that call, we got to come out. When Jesse makes that call, yesterday, we complain about our elected officials. Jesse put on a forum outside. The response was very weak. I was disappointed. I'm sorry I went, because I'm like, yo, what the hell? We complained, but nobody came. Few people watched online. No, you have to come, ask the questions, be present. You want to make people do something, we have to be present. And what this sister's doing, people talk about Martin Luther King all the time. Cassius is quoting Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King he wasn't just in the church, one, he was outside in the streets. 2, he wasn't just marching, he was about changing legislation. For some reason, we don't get that part no more. We just out in the street, we march, we shut down the Brooklyn Bridge for a day, we have a die-in or a sit-in at Grand Central Station. Then people go to work the next day. They don't care what you did. You know, like you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying those things are not important, but without, I said it last week, Hafiz Muhammad came on our show, and the Nation of Islam said justice or else. The problem is we keep demanding, but we don't have an or else we won't vote for you. Or else what? There has to be an or else. There has to be an or else. If they don't do what we want them to do, there has to be an or else. There is no or else no more. And that has to come from us. I got to sign up now, the flag up. I very rarely have it in my background. Black lives have to matter to black people before we expect them to matter to anybody else. Everybody get mad when Damon say that, but that's true. If our lives don't matter to us, how are we going to expect them to matter to anybody else? I do have one more person. He's the attorney who's representing the whistleblower cop in Mount Vernon. I'm going to bring him on. And just before I bring him on, so the city of Mount Vernon, I've worked with a lot of the activists around the country. Several things that they demand and they want, we have in Mount Vernon. Blacks in leadership positions. Number one, Black mayor, Black city council, Black police chief, Black school board superintendent. Black. The other thing they talk about blacks in leadership in police, and we have that. We have a Black commissioner. Then they also say they wish the good cops would speak up against the bad cops. We even have that. We have a whistleblower cop in Mount Vernon who has spoke up against the corruption of what's going on in Mount Vernon, and he has not been protected. He has called for backup, and nobody came. You know what I'm saying? Because he put it out there. He hasn't been protected by our mayor. Our mayor, the police commissioner works at the pleasure of our mayor. The mayor didn't say, "Hey, this dude is a hero. He is to be protected." You put that, he's been called a rat by a sergeant at roll call. That gives freedom for everybody else, all officers to say whatever they want. The sergeant's calling you a rat at roll call. This is Joe Murray. He represents the whistleblower cop. I wanted to let him say a couple of words since he's here. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, AJ, thanks for having me. And I just want to congratulate you. 300 episodes. That's amazing. You're doing a great job. You're doing good work. Dr. Bob, my former professor, good to see you and be on with you. And congratulations to you as well.
So, while we have you, and I brought that up, like I said, we have a lot of the things that people have been marching for in other cities. We have them here, including a good cop who spoke up against the bad cops, which is one of the number one things I hear, no matter what city it is. That's what they're asking. When are we going to get good cops to speak up against the bad cops? We have one, and you represent one that has not been protected.
I got to tell you, it's shocking to me. As you know, I'm a retired police officer. I also ran for district attorney in 2019 in Queens County. And I am just shocked at the way people are reacting to Officer Bovell. Well, Sergeant Bovell now. And right. I just want to bring out something because you touched on it. We have a Black mayor, Black commissioner, Black city council. Even today, this Black police commissioner, in my opinion, hates Officer Bovell. He hates him because everyone is coming to him asking, what are you doing about this? Officer Bovell, like you said, started it. He's the good cop that came forward and said, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm not sitting here watching this anymore. And he spoke up. That's what we want all police officers to do. But what does the commissioner do when he speaks up? He tries to silence him. He attacks him. He calls him a liar. This is outrageous. Now, again, me running for district attorney, I thought the district attorney would embrace him with open arms. And we saw what, what's his name did?
Anthony Scarpino, who's no longer with us.
Yeah, and then for good reason. He's no longer with us for good reason.
Well, let me. He's no longer on DA. He's still alive.
He's still alive.
He's still alive. But we a lot of us saw too that he was no longer our district attorney. And then again, that's another thing we have to be involved in, because one of our district attorney race is one of the best things, nonviolent things we can do to create criminal justice reform that we ask is our vote for our district attorney.
I want to reemphasize what you were saying about getting the public out. They want to know what they can do, how they can help. The district attorney is the most powerful person in our lives. You know, the county district attorney has the power, awesome power of the government, subpoena power, grand jury power, prosecution power, discretionary power. That is the most important race, in my opinion, in anyone's community, the district attorney. the laws that we have on the books, and that's our social contract. We elect representatives who represent us that enact laws, and then we have our executives, like the district attorney, the mayor, the governor. They enforce the law, but the district attorney is such a powerful position that can change everything. And we looked to the district attorney and gave the district attorney our help and assistance, gave them these recordings. We offered to try to go to John Campo and bring him in. They told us, no, don't do that. Leave it alone. Let us handle it. And that was really, I wanted to believe him, but that was really code for, we're going to squash this. They didn't want it to happen. And I don't understand it. I contacted Perry Carbone. He's the chief assistant in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District, White Plains. I contacted him. Actually, he reached out to me when the story hit and asked me for the recordings. Gave it to him right away. He thanked me for sending them right away. That was 11 months ago. Nothing's happened. I sent them another recording that we haven't released publicly yet, but I sent them another recording to demonstrate how deep this cover-up goes. He said to me, have you been in touch with the Westchester DA? It was like he punted me back to the Westchester DA. Why aren't you interested in this? Why don't you want to hear more about this? So I did meet with Mr. Hardy over at the Westchester DA's office. We had a great conversation, but again, it's just another conversation. We need action here. My client put his life on the line to expose this, and you said it. This is what we want cops to do. Good cops to come forward and point out the bad ones. Well, my client did that. And he's been retaliated against in the worst ways. And, I got to say something, too. I'm a little critical of the mayor and the way she's handled things, but I don't doubt for a minute that she was the force behind him getting promoted to sergeant. And it was interesting that it was her and Commissioner Lackard that spent the most time with him, interviewing him before the promotions were announced, and then speaking to us at the ceremony. Scott didn't want to say two words to me. Morales, who surprised me, he's a friend of mine. We were in the NYPD together on the boxing team, and I was a little disappointed that the support is not there for now Sergeant Bovell. But I love that he's now a sergeant because the younger cops are looking up to him. And even the other bosses are looking to him. Like the very simple issue, they weren't getting their raises. All the newly promoted supervisors weren't getting their raises. He stood up. He sent out a group email. He started, professionally addressing the issue. The issue with the cars, the cars are dilapidated. They didn't have gas for the cars. He's standing up and he's organizing and he's trying to get people together to work together. This is a guy who's a police commissioner's dream come true, who's the community's dream come true. And that's why I really thank you guys for all the efforts you put in, the rallies and Jesse coming and all the guys, ATIF, you really did rally behind him and you made a difference. And I'm forever grateful and will always support you.
I know we started on one thing, but what plagues our community is not one problem. We have senseless gun violence. That's a big problem. We do have police criminality. That is a problem. We do have criminal justice reform fights, which include ending qualified immunity. All of these take all of us to get involved, and everybody don't have to be on the front. Some people might be scared to go out with Henry Terry at midnight or whatever time to talk to the youth and deal and be in the streets. Everybody's not built like that, but there is other things that you can do. One is
I'm not a fan.
If you're not going to go, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I know you're not. But I said one thing. If you're not built like that to go out in the street, why don't we support the people that are? So sometimes some of the support you can do is with financially. You know what I'm saying? Because these movements, all these movements take money.
Support the effort.
I mean, same thing with Westchester, everything that we do takes money. You know what I'm saying? You expect us, you call us when you need us. Sometimes some support has to be financial as well. I'm not in here, I mean, I do have a donate button if anybody wants to hit, but I'm not in here trying to give money for Black Westchester. But all of these organizations need support on that level. You know what I'm saying? All of these fights that we have. And another thing you can do is calling your legislators, whether it's locally, whether it's countywide, and whether it's your state senators and assembly. We have to, with the national outrage after George Floyd, if we don't get change in legislation now, we may never get it. You had outrage, you had protests in every city, every major city in the United States, and 20 other countries protesting the outrage. If we don't get criminal justice reform, which is the big umbrella that covers a lot of this stuff now, we may never get it. And the senseless gun violence is one of the things that I first started just talking about, and we went everywhere else. That also is going to take all of us to get involved. Sometimes being involved is not on the street. Sometimes, like Dr. Bob said, it may be a mentor program. It may be you are a small business and you support a team and the Little League baseball team. So we get these young kids something to do so they're not hanging out with their older brothers and sisters in the street, being exposed to stuff they don't have no business being exposed to, which is where it starts. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got parents got to work 2 and 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their head. It's the older brother got to watch them. The older brother's in the street. So where the young kid at? With his brother in the street,
right.
Being exposed to everything like that, or being recruited if you don't have an older brother by being recruited by the neighborhood gang. So that's something you can do without being in the street, and it ain't dangerous. Supporting the baseball league, supporting the Razorback, supporting a lot of other programs. Calling your local officials, demanding more programs for the kids to get involved in. Everybody don't play. We had a rally when Richard Thomas was mayor. Well, he was city councilman at the time. He had a youth symposium, and I understand it was because he was running for office. But they had me speak, and one of the things, there was a bunch of kids there, and I said, well, I'm not going to answer the question what we should be doing for the youth. We got a bunch of youth here. Why don't we ask the youth what they want? Why are we having a conversation with the youth without the youth? The things that they said were not the normal things. They were like, everybody keep putting up basketball courts. You know how many of us don't play basketball? Many of us play soccer. Can we get a soccer field? Can we get a skate park? The things that they were saying were things that the city wasn't even thinking about, that our kids want to do, but there's no place for them to do it. So we need to listen. We need to reach out to our kids and listen to what it is that they want to do. And we need to put these programs in place that keeps them off the street, that keeps them hopefully out of jail. You know what I'm saying? Which is a lot of the problem that we're having right now. Those are things we all can get involved to do. Real quick, we come to the end of the show. I want to give my 3 guests a chance to say a couple of words, 30 seconds or less, just, whether it's George Floyd or senseless gun violence or criminal justice reform or whatever. I'll start with you, Joe.
Oh, thank you. And thanks again. Congratulations to you guys. I think this is wonderful. It's an outstanding platform. I love to hear the conversations, and that's where it has to begin. We have to start talking about it. I do it with my cases. I talk to other lawyers. Hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And we come up with great ideas on how to solve problems. But if nobody's talking, nothing's going to happen. So I encourage everyone to support Black Westchester, subscribe, tune in, and voice your opinion. Let your voice be heard. God bless all of you. Congratulations. I hope to see another 300.
I wonder, I did cut you off, and I did it on purpose. We're going to have a future show where we're going to deal with qualified immunity. I know that y'all have opposing views, so that would be a time where we have, in that conversation, we can talk the pros and cons of qualified immunity then. So that's the only reason I cut you off, not to get into that conversation now, because we don't have a lot of time. We will be doing a show.
Absolutely. I learned from these conversations myself, and that's why the more talking we do about it, the better off we'll all be.
Right. Darlene.
Yes, I
Last
just
words,
want to.
and please give your social media one more time where people can follow you and everything too.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you today for giving me a platform to speak and hopefully, provide some education for people. I know that this Tuesday there's a big rally going on. They're talking about, the bridge again on Tuesday. And again, it's like, what are you fighting for? What are you really fighting for? We know that these things happen, and then tomorrow they go back to work, just like you said, and then nothing changes, right? So we need something to fight for. And, I won't belabor it, but I believe that that's the first step in what we need to fight for. So again, you can follow the group on Instagram or on Twitter at at, at end QINY. That's at ENDQINY, both on Instagram and on Twitter. And then you can follow me on Facebook. I believe I'm Darlene Patricia. Also on Twitter, I think I'm Darlene Patricia. And then on Instagram, I may go under another name, but I'm sure you could find me. And I was following you, AJ, and I followed
Yes,
Kenneth. So you guys will track me down somewhere.
absolutely. And you
But
know how to
thank
reach me.
you.
You know how to reach me. So let's continue this conversation.
Yes,
My
thank you.
brother Henry Terry. I didn't give you a lot of time to talk. We talked more about it last week, but I just wanted to, applaud the work you're doing. Give you a chance for last words and maybe another call to action because we need our brothers and sisters to come out and help you do with the work that you're doing. And sometimes helping is in different forms. It's not always just walking the streets with you. So good.
Thanks again. Thanks for the opportunity. Congratulations on the 300th show. And the call of action is consistent. It's continuous. It doesn't stop because there's always a need for action, especially dealing with gun violence and the rate that we're losing our young people to gun violence. Mount Vernon Snug it's one of the greatest things under the sun to me. But it's not the only snug. We have sites in 12 cities throughout the state of New York. So I mean, we're in Yonkers, Mount Vernon, we're in the Bronx, we're in Wyandanch, Long Island, we're in Hempstead, Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, Syracuse, Albany, Troy, Buffalo. We're in all these cities doing the exact same work that you here in Mount Vernon see me and my team doing. So I just want to say that yes, you live in Mount Vernon, we live in Mount Vernon, we live in Westchester, but we have loved ones and we have family members in those neighboring cities. So everyone, please support your local snug unit. Wherever you may be, support your local snug unit because snug is all about supporting you, supporting our communities, our families, our victims, and also our offenders, because a lot of times these people that are committing these heinous acts of gun violence is not of their doing, or they don't have an understanding of what it is that they actually are doing. So it's bigger than just that trigger being pulled. So we are on all social media platforms. You can find us. We also have a podcast called 209 Snug TV. So check us out. Thank you, and we're here.
Shout to always while I'm born in Mount Vernon, I live in Mount Vernon. I also lived in Long Island. Shout to Strong Island. Shout to Wyandanch, Straight Path. For my brothers out there on Straight Path. Shout to Hempstead, Terrace Avenue, and my brothers out there. I spent some time out there a lot too. So shout to all my people. Shout to my people in Strong Island. Dr. Bob, last words.
I just want to congratulate you and Damon personally, AJ, for the wonderful job that y'all have done. There's no way to overstate the importance of indigenous Black media to highlight the important struggles, challenges that we face, and to call for solutions to them. And so hats off to you and Damon, and to all of the other people that you've been able to bring to this effort, including Cynthia Turnquest Jones, of course, the lovely
Lorraine Lopez,
Lorraine Lopez, and so many others. Yes, and I want to say, and to Henry Terry, Joe Murray, Darlene, Patricia, and all the other activists, organizers who take us up on the invitation to share your mission and good work with us. And I hope that will inspire others. We can't thank you all enough. So
I'm going to say this. I'm trying to find the night. Well, I don't know if there's a nice way to say it. So I'm going to say this, and I'm very disappointed. So on our 100th episode, we had a celebration. We was popping bottles. I mean, we was doing the whole thing. Literally no less than 100 people came through. He got an apple too. No, those was not the bottles we was popping back then. We was drinking white Henny and everything. But we was popping bottles. It was a celebration. And we had no less than 100 people part of that episode. I mean, literally no less. They either came through. My man Tony Earl came from Spring Valley area. I mean, we had people coming from the city. Like the studio was full. We had a 3-hour show, in and out. Elected officials was making videos and stuff. The 200th episode, we also had a big celebration. So me not having a celebration now and deciding to deal with some issues, it's like I can't get people to come. Because we're not partying and bullshit. We're not celebrating, but we talking real issues. And just like yesterday, when Save Mount Vernon had the rally, and just like last week or the week before, when Henry called everybody out to rally in front of that where that kid got killed, I'm very disappointed in the involvement of our community. And I'm just gonna keep it real. I'm very, very disappointed. If I told everybody we was popping bottles and everything, I would have had to use, like on here, you can only, on this program, you can only use 10. I would have had to do it on Zoom because we'd had hundreds of people on the screen coming in and out all day celebrating. They also popping bottles and talking junk and everything else. But because we talked about, I decided to dedicate this to issues. Now I'm not upset that I did. I'm glad I did. Many people will see it after the fact on the archive on blackwestchester.com. And I think it was important for us to do this, but I'm disappointed in a lot of our people.
Well, AJ, let me tell you, AJ, everybody shows up for the party, but nobody stays for the cleanup. And that's what the issues are, the cleanup after the party. Everybody wants to show up for the party and be in the pictures and, be seen with whoever it is that's being celebrated. But once all that's done, no matter what type of party it was, no matter what type of venue it was, there's always a cleanup after the party. And that's what everybody wants to avoid. Everybody wants to head out early or get going before it's time to get their hands dirty.
Right. But I applaud all of y'all individually and a lot of others who follow this show, Kenneth Chamberlain, a lot of others who actively get their hands dirty on a daily basis and have these tough conversations and are not afraid to be out there. Because like Kenny said, they talk about us, this, that, and the other, but when their kid is shot, Henry Terry gonna be one of the first ones to get called. When a loved one is shot by the police, Kenneth Chamberlain, we're gonna be the first ones they call. You know what I'm saying? When you get violated, Joe gonna be one of the first ones they call to represent. When you're dealing with a situation like Darlene, she gonna be one of the first people you call. But the very people that would call us won't stand with us. Like Kenneth Chamberlain said, I understand. I'm the biggest Knicks fan. The Knicks game is on right now. Y'all see me turning my head a little bit. But I'm doing this show. Kenneth Chamberlain couldn't get people to stand with him after his father was killed because it was Sunday and there was a big football game on. And his brothers, people that were his brothers said, oh man, come on, man, the game's on. Like literally that was the excuse not to stand with him after the travesty that happened with his father. So I just want to express for everybody who will hear this, I am very disappointed. Obama said, and a lot of people quote this, but they don't live it. Be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. We keep looking for other people to do it for us. No one is going, and I keep telling people, Black Westchester is not going to fight for people who are not going to fight for themselves. I'm not talking about people who can't fight for themselves. But for 7 years, we've been on the front line fighting for people, and when the rocks come back, we turn around and the people we fighting for ain't nowhere. We the only one getting hit. Why? You ain't even standing. Your fight, you're not standing with us. You understand what I'm saying? So we're not gonna fight for people who won't fight for themselves, who won't fight for themselves. Not can't, but won't. Yo, we can't expect people to fight for us and do more than we're willing to do. I know this might fall on deaf ears. I know people gonna be like, "Oh, there, AJ go on the soapbox again." But you know what? I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna keep banging it home. People tell me, "Why do I waste my time?" Because I care. One, Mount Vernon, this is my city. My mom was born. This is my family. I'm 3 generations Mount Vernon. I'm also 3 generations New Rochelle, my father's side. Yo, I care about these communities. I care about my community as a whole. Period. And we have to do. And again, we're out here on our own as far as media is concerned. We need more people to get involved in that aspect too, to tell our stories. We need a new generation of truth speakers. And hopefully we encourage someone here, and hopefully something we do is going to do something that's going to lead to saving their life, where they're not getting beat up and killed in jail, or they're not getting killed on the street, or, you know, they're not being turned on by other officers when they speak up, or like Kenneth Chamberlain, your father's not getting killed. Hopefully we'll save someone. So that's what this was. And I thank everybody for being involved. This is Black Westchester presents the People Before Politics radio show. This is our 300th episode. Again, I did not feel like celebrating. I don't think we have anything to celebrate when we got brothers and sisters getting killed on the street. Again, we had a 6-year-old caught in the crossfire in Yonkers. We had 4 or 5 shootings in New Rochelle. We had, I don't know how many shootings in Mount Vernon, including a 17-year-old getting shot in broad daylight at 10 a.m. in front of his friend's house, and his friend's mom has to open the door and see her son's friend bleeding out on her doorstep. We had a very peaceful send-off rally vigil for DMX, and 2 hours later, 2-3 people were shot, and the News 12 dude had to jump in the van, and the guy who shot jumped in the van with Ty Milburn until the police came, because he was running for cover. Yo, it's not even hot. We had a couple of shootings I heard by Ebony Gardens too. Yo, it's not hot yet. I mean, it's hot today, but when the temperature gets hot, the streets get hot, and we got a perfect storm. Inmates was released because of COVID and because of bail reform. If they can't get jobs, there's no stimulus checks for them. There ain't no unemployment checks for them. What you think eventually they're going to do for money? People been in the house because of COVID. It's warm. Everybody coming out. They starting to see people they ain't seen in a long time. The streets was peaceful because everybody was in the house. And guess what? They back out now. People going to start seeing each other. What you think is going to happen? You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we got to get involved. And as my brother Henry Terry says, and I quote him all the time, do not, with this and all the situations, do not wait till this hits your doorstep before you get involved. With that, that's it. This is Black Westchester, People Before Politics. This is the 300th episode. We appreciate y'all, all the support. We got a donate link for anybody who wants to donate. We appreciate you. Until next week, peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. and I'm not afraid to say it, 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 and I'm not afraid to say it.